which you may or may not know from the musical Chicago. I'm just going to read it.
99 bottles of beer on the wall.
Not 99 bottles of beer.
Cellophane, Mr. Cellophane.
Yes, excellent. How did you do that? That was impressive. I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to sing it, but then we'll see what it has to do with chapter 4 of Shmuel Bet. Mr. Cellophane, if someone stood up in a crowd and raised his voice way out loud and waved his arm and shook his leg, you'd notice him. If someone in the movie show yelled fire in the second row, this whole place is a powder keg, you'd notice him. And even without clucking like a hen, everyone gets noticed now and then, unless, of course, that person should be invisible and consequential me. Okay, previously on the book of Shmuel, part Bet, we saw how David dealt with a very politically sensitive issue. Avner, who was essentially the puppet master behind the kingship of Ish-Boshet, had no sooner agreed to switch to David's side and unite the monarchy under him when he is ignominiously murdered by David's head of the army, that's Yoav. And we pointed out that while David is able to distance himself from that act, he nevertheless capitalizes on it to have Avner buried not in Binyamin, where Avner was the general of Binyamin and Ish-Boshet's army, but instead in Yehuda. This week, we're going to once again see David's enemies eliminated without his knowledge or consent. Once that's sorted, it's finally time for David's monarchy and character arc to reach their pinnacle. Everything goes right, and for a time, we're about to enter Camelot. Let's savor it while it lasts. Who would like to start us off in Shmuel Bet, chapter number 4? Don't all call it at once.
It looks like first time, so I want to share. I don't know who else.
Shimmy's taking the reins.
Okay, good.
Ishmael ben Shaul, son of Shaul, heard the mace Avner that Avner died of Hebron, Beautiful Yodov, B'chol Yisrael Nechalu. And what's that? Must be approved.
It's a phrase. Yirpu Yodov means that he was, dismayed. They felt weak. Nivhalu is to be like confused. The interesting thing to point out here is that, again, Ish-Boshet has a name, which we assiduously avoid. Vayishma ben Shaul. He doesn't even get, what's the credit in the movie? He doesn't get like a
supporting candidate.
Right. He has no lines. Okay.
He's like the guy,
he's an NPC.
Bus driver number 2.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Shnei Nashim, and 2 men, Sari Gedurim, Ben Shaul, they were like officers of Shaul. Shem Echad Bana, the name of the first one is Bana, V'Shem Sheni Rechal, Bnei Rimon, son of Rimon, HaBarosi. Was that son of Barosi? Bnei Binyamin, they were sons of Binyamin. He Gam Be'eros Techashev Al Binyamin.
Even Beirut, which is Aver Yardain, that's still part of the whole Binyamin crew. So they're of the same shevet. That's the point over here. You have 2 of Ish-Boshet's guards. There's almost like who is it in the Megillah? Big Son and Sarash. Like, they're supposed to be his guards. They're supposed to be on his side, right? It doesn't end well for Ish-Boshet because of the 2 guys who are from his own shevet, and they are his own guards. But still, we continue to pasuk 3. Gitaima.
Right, so the Beresam, they fled to Gitaima. Yusham Garam Adiyamadan. That's where they basically live until today.
So even the most dedicated officers of the Shevet Binyamin, they got out of Dodge. Like once there was the shakeup in the monarchy and Avner is killed and things are kind of falling apart, they skedaddle.
Yehonasan ben Shaul, Yehonasan the son of Shaul, Ben Nechebegain, he had a son who was lame. Ben Chameshanim is 5 years old. Hayya Babo, Shmuel Shaul, Yehonasan Israel. Is that what they heard or what?
There was this whole pasuk is kind of a callback to the end of Shmuel Aleph. So Shaul dies, and now the news spreads that Shaul and Yehonasan are dead. So they hear about it in Yisrael, where the son of Yehonasan is.
Got it. Zeo Manto Batanim.
Batanos.
So his wet nurse stopped nursing him.
She carries him.
She carries him.
She's trying to get out of Dodge too.
So she runs to Miboshes.
She tries to run away. She drops this kid, and that's what makes him lame. His name is Mephibosheth, and we talked about there's some very weird names. The children of the family of Shaul. Another version of this Divrei Yamim has Mephibal, and we changed Mephibal to Mephibosheth. But this whole pasuk is it's doing two things. It's an aside. It has nothing to do with the story we just read in the three previous psukim or the subsequent psukim, and we'll talk in a minute why it's there. But it's also foreshadowing. We're going to need to know that, spoiler alert here, even if Ish-Boshet dies, we haven't wiped out every last remnant of the family of Shaul. There's, by the way, says the narrator, there's still another kid. So you're going to read something, and you, dear reader, may think that that's it. We've wiped out all the last vestige of Shaul. No, there's still this kid. He's not in line for the throne. The kid is lame. That's it. He's disqualified. Puzzle. He's not going to have play a factor in the contest of the Game of Thrones, but he is still in existence, and part of the reason.
His goods could become.
Right. So we later on need to know that this guy is around, especially because otherwise we have no way to get to Mordechai. Right. Mordechai is from the family of Kish. He's a descendant of Shaul. So if we wipe out all of Shaul's family, how do we get to Mordechai? We need this kid is going to play a very important role in the history of the Jews, but less so in the story, other than to tell us that there is still a remnant of the family of Shaul. The other thing this pasuk does, for those of us who recall way back in the beginning of Shmuel Aleph, we had almost the exact same story at the death of the sons of Eli. So Eli had a grandson, Ichabod, right? Ikavod, who was born when his mother hears about the destruction of the capture of the Aron and the death of the son, right? So she gives birth to someone sort of in haste. And that's really what's happening over here, is that you have the last vestige of a family that's given birth in haste after hearing about terrible news, the death and destruction of Shaul and Yehuda.
Come from, or
maybe.
Yeah,
Could be.
Doesn't the Gemara say that these two big Amoraim or Tanaim were like descendants of Eli, and one lived 40 years and the other one lived 60 years because he did chesed also?
Yeah.
I think it was Rabbi and Abaye.
Could be.
So someone who's lame cannot be king? I would not accept.
That's weird,
right?
Yeah.
Right,
not,
especially
not
given
very
the fact that Chizkiyahu a Melech, and who is it?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who was the one of
even
the
FDR, they gave him a hard time.
Like Yoash or something, like one of them had Saras and one of them was sick, and like they didn't get deposed,
Yeah, I think.
There's a lot of things like that.
Yeah. It's hard to rally people around, especially in those times when someone has a problem like that.
Military leader.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's keep going to pasuk 5.
And they went out during the heat of the day. Base Ish-Boshet, who Shocheves Mishkav Soram, and he was sitting in the outside.
No, he's sleeping in the middle of the day.
He's sleeping in the day.
It's okay. It's bad news when Jewish kings sleep in the middle of the day. We haven't got to the story of David and Bathsheba yet, but that's gonna really tell you what kind of fiasco there is when Jewish kings sleep in the middle of the day. It's not clear that Ish-Boshet even knows if he's still king. He's lost his general. The general
all of his support. His
political
support's gone.
So on the one hand, you could say, well, this is just something that kings do. They, take a siesta whenever they feel like. On the other hand, it's not. We don't get a real indication from the story that he is even assuming that he continues to be king. But okay, let's keep going.
And the woman of the house was who had been shearing wheat. and she hit the.
No, this is not her. Okay, let's read the whole pasuk.
לכל החמש רכב וענה אחר נמלטו. Not in fell asleep.
No. So they come in. I'll read you the JPS.
Okay.
So they went inside the house as though they were fetching wheat and struck him. Ela Chomesh is the fifth rib. We talked about that before. Who struck him? That's Rechav and Bana. In case you didn't remember who we were talking about from the last pasuk, Rimon and Rechav. I guess the same guy. Achiv, and then Nimlotu. Then they ran away. So Rechav and Bana are brothers. They maybe they dress up like wheat gatherers, or they come under some sort of disguise. They slip into Ish-Boshet's house.
They then look the woman.
Right. Okay, we're gonna get to that in 1 second. They slip into Ish-Boshet's house. They catch him unawares. They kill him by stabbing him through the fifth rib, and they slip back out undetected. It's a hard pasuk to parse. That's sort of the basic bare translation. The Targum invents a whole story about the fact that he's being guarded by a woman, and the woman goes out to pick wheat, and that's how they slip in behind the guards. There's an implicit criticism of Ish-Boshet, like why are you being guarded by women as opposed to the way a king is supposed to be guarded?
The Trump thing.
What's that?
Like the Trump thing.
Right.
Wait, what?
I have no idea what's
Like by the first assassination when he was.
Oh,
by
yes.
a Secret Service woman.
right. The Secret Service. I like that. That's from the Targum Yonasan. It's not. We'll say it's more midrashic. Trying to figure out like how did we get to the Lokhe Chitim over here? That's where they kind of fetch that in.
Mm.
But that pasuk 6 encapsulates the whole story, and now we're going to go back and give you more detail.
Okay, so Yoba bias and he came to his house to Shochev al Michosa, and he was laying in his bed. Badamish
Bachadar.
Bachadar, like in his bedroom.
Mm-hmm. So we're getting very precise location of where he's sleeping in his bed, in his bedroom, the bed that's in his bedroom.
Right. So the master
Interesting
bedroom.
literary license. Why didn't they do this kind of in order?
Yeah.
So like they
and they hit him. Vimosa, and they killed him. V'yasiru Asrasha, and they cut off his head, or
Yeah.
V'yichu Asrasha, and they took the head. V'yichu derech harava kol halayla, and they carried it all throughout the way.
Yeah, they run off through the night with his head. So there's a bunch of weird things about this. So Shaul and his son both have their heads cut off. Cutting off and bringing the head. Where do you think they're bringing this head? To David, right? So that's big time traitor behavior. They're from his own shevet, right? You don't get much more traitors than that. When David was running away from Shaul, David's men wanted to kill Shaul in his sleep, right? They came. This exact scenario happened with David. David and his men came. They found Shaul sleeping, right? And they took his staff and his jug, and instead of but the men were like, God's given him into your hands, right? You should kill him. He's sleeping.
Like he's the anointed one of Hashem.
David's like, we don't do that. We don't kill the anointed one of Hashem. Certainly not his own people in his bedroom in his sleep, right? This is very evil behavior. Is what the.
But unless I missed it in the last 2 weeks, where was Ish-Boshet like directly linked towards running after David?
He's not. He's the son of Shaul.
I know. So there's no real.
No, the way the pasuk is describing this is recasting that same story that happened to David and Shaul. It's happening here, but it's all going wrong. Instead of David, who is the righteous person and says, we don't kill the anointed one of God, certainly not in his sleep, but really at all. Here you get the same thing. You have Shaul's son sleeping, and his own men are killing him in his sleep and decapitating him the way the enemy did to Shaul. Like, these are not things that you would expect a Jew, certainly not a Jew from the same shevet, to behave.
So does the Navi give us the motive of these two at all? Or is it
We're gonna
just
get in like 5 more episodes.
Please, David, like
But the
which
sheriff's
is the
young,
same
right?
thing that happened with Shaul.
Exactly.
They brought that thinking that it Shaul would be happy.
Exactly right. That's exactly what we're gonna see, and that again reiterates the person that did that last time was an Amaleki, right? And so
He
now
ended
they're
up dead.
yeah,
They're thinking they were gonna. So, I guess they didn't get the memo.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. You get
They
the
didn't read that
memo.
tweet.
I'll just go ahead and send that memo again.
Maybe another wants this.
Doesn't make sense that they're from the same shit.
Does make less sense.
It just makes it more treacherous.
Right.
Like David was not from the same shave as Shaul, and he wouldn't condone that kind of behavior. You, who are his own flesh and blood, so to speak, to not only not protect him. Remember, they're the guards. They're supposed to be on his side. So it's one thing to not be on his side and to run away. It's another thing to then sneakily come in and betray him, kill him, and then go try to act like the hero to his quote unquote enemy to go over to David. And we're going to see David says exactly that.
The view is Ish-Boshet, and bring the head of Ish-Boshet to David, and and he said, to the king, Ish-Boshet, here is the head of Ish-Boshet.
I mean, I don't know why they have to like
I
be
was
so.
just like,
What if
They labeled it exhibit number one.
God.
Right, here's the guy, and David's like, who is this?
Ish-Boshet ben Shaul, the son of Shaul, Erecha, your enemy, Asher Bikesh, Nafshecha, who wanted your nefesh, your
Wanted to kill you.
wanted to kill you. Vita Hashem Aleni Amelech, but Hashem has granted, Hashem our king has granted. Who might say, this day Hazeh Mishal Mizareh from saving you or saved you from Shaul and his children.
Right. Now, remember, David made a very big display of mourning over Shaul and Yonasan, right? So either people didn't hear about it or they didn't believe it or whatever the case may be.
This guy was so much less of a threat. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it really doesn't make any sense. So let's see how David takes the news.
And David answered, Zvechem Vespana Achet B'nei Limon Habresi V'Yom Alehem Chaya Hashem Asher Pada Es Nafshi Kosara. Right. So Hashem was saved me from every Sarai I ran into.
Right. This is the beginning of an oath. The pasuk stops mid sentence. It's going to continue the next sentence, but he's begun taking an oath.
Hine made Shaul, behold, Shaul is dead. Who haya kimavase be'enav, who it happened before my eyes.
No, he was like a mavasa. He was like he thought he was bringing me good tidings.
So how much more by Gehu, the Siklog that you killed.
No, I ochazabo, and I grabbed him by Hargeo, and I made sure he was killed at Siklag in the town of Siklag where we were residing at the time. That was how I repaid him for his quote unquote good news. He showed up like, oh, I've got some great news for you, David. You know what I repaid him with? I had him executed, says David. So like, guys, what do you you've got this all wrong.
How much more so for the wicked men who kill Nish Sadik in his house, on his bed, hello,
I'm going to seek the retribution of his blood.
From the land or rid the land of you.
Yeah.
David and David commanded all the children Yavum
He's trying to really get the message across here.
Right. So they killed them.
David's men killed these two guys who brought the head of Ish-Boshet.
And cut off the hand of Shaklim and they feed Brecha and they strung them up.
By the pool.
By what?
By the pool, by the cabana.
And Hebron Ish-Boshet Lakhu, and they took the head of Ish-Boshet, and they buried it with Kever Avner Hebron. The Kever with Avner and Hebron. Right.
So that is the ignominious end of Ish-Boshet. The Na'arim just means his younger officers. Yeah. What's the point of mutilating the corpses?
The corpses?
They killed these two guys, Rechav and Bana, and then they mutilate them. They cut off the hands and feet. That's not a normal thing that Jewish people do.
Right, like I was not connected to this thing. These guys are really bad news, and they're getting like punished.
Okay, why not cut off their heads? I'm just making like what is there symbolism around the hands and feet?
The hands that
The hands that ran
That
into.
did the crime, the people that ran away.
Excellent. I think that's exactly right.
So here's the other thing. Why is their dad's name Limon? I don't know. Is there any significance to it being pomegranate?
I don't know. I don't know. That's a fair
We
question.
don't have, and again, I missed last week, but we don't have any backstory of the plot to go after Ish-Boshet, or this just happened. They
They
today.
thought they were doing a good thing.
Right. They know that David's clan is at war with Ish-Boshet's clan. So they think, hey, the best way for us to ingratiate ourselves and show that we're on David's team is by taking out his enemy. Right?
There's nothing like really leading up to that. There's no conversation. There's no like
The last
confrontation.
parak was Avner saying,
Right.
I'm going to bring everybody over to the side of David. And then, unfortunately, Avner is killed, and David mourns the killing to the point where everyone's like, okay, we get it. You were not involved. And then the segue is, okay, and then one fine morning when Ish-Boshet is sleeping, two terrible people put an end to his life. Now, the thing that's missing from the end of chapter 4 that we had any other time in this parak when David has one of his enemies killed that he didn't really want to have killed is
Say it again.
what usually happens after David finds out that someone killed one of his enemies that he didn't want to have killed, such as Shaul or Avner. But he kills them. That did happen. What else does he do?
He mourns.
He sings a little dirge, right?
Yeah.
No little dirge for Ish-Boshet. That's how much Mr. Cellophane he is. He doesn't even get like the full-on, oh, I can't believe that Ish-Boshet was killed. I'm so sad. I want to tell all the people that I had nothing to do with it. We just, okay, you guys killed him.
Move on. This has happened twice already. Let's just go.
So
Okay.
this cellophane reference is this.
Yeah, it's a Pittsburgh thing.
No,
No.
you gotta watch the play.
I think we went to that. I don't remember.
Chicago?
Yeah.
I think years ago.
Yeah.
It's this guy complaining that he's like persona non grata, that nobody pays him any attention, and that's basically Ish-Boshet. He was Mr. Cellophane. I think we can, if we try, cover chapter 5 as well, and then next week we'll probably spend more than 1 week on chapter 6. Is it okay if I take over?
Yeah.
Ve'yavo kol shiftei Yisrael el David Hebron. So all of the Jewish people, every Sheva comes to Hebron, Vayomru, and they say, Lemor, Hinenu atzmacha, ubesarcha nachnu, we're all your flesh and blood, David. Gam etmol, gam shloshom. We've been this way for many days. Biyosa Shaul melech aleinu ata, hayisa, hamosi, v'hamevius Yisrael. You were the man who made things happen even when Shaul was king. Like we've always been on your side. This is really long overdue. Vayomer Adonai lacha atatir es ami es Yisrael ve'atati yelen agid al Yisrael. And this is sort of paraphrasing what Avner said. In other words, all the Jewish people know that you were the one who was going to be the ruler over Yisrael. Vayavokol ziknei Yisrael el hamelech Hebrona. And so they bring in the heavy hitters. They bring in the Rosh Yeshiva to Hebron. Veichros lahem hamelech. Vichros lahem hamelech David bris bechebron, and David makes a covenant, a bris with them in Hebron, lifnei Adonai, before Hashem, vayimshechu es David lemelech al Yisrael, and they anoint David as king over the Jewish people.
Again.
This is the third time that David has been anointed as king. How many times was Shaul anointed as king?
Once.
3 times.
Oh, 3 times?
No.
Yes.
Oh.
Good question.
No, I don't remember.
Yeah, that even really accepted the first time and then the second.
Yeah. This is the first time that
the answer was 2. But, okay.
This is the first time that people spoke a little, I won't say ill of Shaul, but they kind of put David over Shaul. In the past, whenever that happened, he would protest. This time, he doesn't protest at all. Okay. Ben Shloshim Shana David b'Malko, Arba'im Shana Malach. So he was 30 when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years. Who else was 30 when they became king?
Give us the first letter.
Yosef. Yes, Yosef was 30 years old when he became viceroy
Wow.
of Mitzrayim.
Going back there. I was like,
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Very good.
Come on, man. You left me hanging.
The Chevron Malach al Yehuda Sheva Shanim v'Shisha Chadashim. This is something we've already seen before, but we're just recapping for you over here that he was king in Hebron for 7.5 years. Ubishalayim Malach Shloshim v'Shalosh Shana, and in Yerushalayim 33 years. Al Kol Yisrael v'Yehuda, over all of the united Jewish people. Vayelech Hamelech v'Anashav Yerushalayim El Hayevusi. So you and I know that Yerushalayim is like the most important city of the Jewish people. It did not always used to be that way. In fact, Yerushalayim was a backwater town that was ruled over by the Yevusi and had never really fully been conquered. Like when the Jewish people were conquering with Yoshua, they didn't get to Yerushalayim. Nobody identified Yerushalayim as, oh, that's really important. We better spend a lot of time.
But like,
yeah. So, Vayelech HaMelech v'anashav Yerushalayim el haYevusi yoshev haaretz vayomer leDavid lemor, and the Yevusi taunt David, saying as follows, and you can insert here your French taunting from Monty Python. Lo tavo hena, you're not coming here. Kim hesircha ha'evirim v'hapischim lemor lo yavo David hena. We can repel you with the blind and the lame. They will turn you back, David. There's no way David's getting in here because this city is so well fortified and guarded that we don't even need to use an army. We could turn you back with like the most incompetent and incapable of people, because we have such a well fortified city. Why did David pick Yerushalayim? Any takers? You figure Yerushalayim is a pretty important city. There's a whole map thing on why.
Because it was just next.
If you're interested. So it seems like it was the perfect geographical spot to unite the Malchus. David, Shaul is in the north and the west, and David is in the south and the east. This is like centralized. If you want to unite, like physically unite the people, this is the central spot. So it works very well to do that.
Holy
Land,
Maria,
right. Yeah. So we have to get to all of that. True. Yeah. Absolutely. But politically, that's religiously important, but it's also very politically important. Is I guess where I'm trying to go. Tactically important. Yes. Yeah. We're gonna see they actually found. Well, let's get to the next pasuk. Yeah. Vayilko David es Mitsudas Tzion, he Ir David. But David captured the stronghold of Tzion. That's the Ir David. Vayomer David bayom hahu kol make Yevusi vayiga batzinor v'es hapischim v'es avirim. Anybody who attacks the Yevusi and then they reach the water channel and they strike down those blind, lame guardians of the city. This is a little tongue in cheek. Sanui nefesh David, the ones that hate David. Al ken yomru. That's why they say no one who's blind or lame can enter my house. Vayeshev David b'mitzuda v'yikrala Ir David vayiven David saviv min hamilo v'abayisa vayilech David haloch v'gadol v'Adonai Elohei tzvaos imo. Okay, so a few things to point out over here. They actually found this spring citadel. We have pictures for you of the spring citadel. This is the archaeologists have identified. This is the stuff that's inside. You can go there today and see in Ir David. They also found what's called Warren Shaft. This is Wikipedia. They found this, I think, in the 1800s. This is where we should actually read it from Binyamin. That's where Yoav went in and conquered the city. So the city is well fortified, but they have like a water channel to bring water into the city. And Yoav basically figures out how to go from there into the city and then breaches the walls.
We did it little.
Yeah?
Yeah, we did those.
So,
really wet.
So
it goes up to your waist.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what we're talking about over here. So
don't do it during the winter.
Right.
There was a bunch of seminary girls who were just yelling and screaming,
right?
Getting nervous, like backing up the whole tour.
So in Divrei Yomim Aleph, in Parak Yud Aleph Pasuk Vav, we get more of the story than what we got over here. Vayomer David, and David says to his army as they're approaching the city, Kol make Yevusi barishona yel larosh. Whoever is the first one to knock out the Yevusi, I'm going to appoint him like the larosh ulasar. He's going to be like the head of my army. Vayal barishona Yoav ben Surya vayihi larosh. So Yoav ben Surya is actually the one who accomplishes what David says over here in terms of taking out the army and conquering Ir David.
Which is bananas, because now he's politically untouchable.
Right, he is politically untouchable.
At least until the next generation.
Yeah. let's see. I don't know if anybody is a Baal Koreh, but this pasuk of Vayelech David Haloch v'Gadol Hashem Elokei Tzavakos Imo, that we have a few other times. One is in Esther 9:4.
Yeah, that's going to be from
Yeah.
Megillah Esther. Yeah.
Right. And the original one is actually Bereshis 26:13. That it's by Yitzchak, where he the Plishtim recognize his ascendancy, and it says that he keeps growing greater and greater. I think that there is kind of a callback here because we're about to begin the conflict with the Plishtim for the last time. David is going to take the Plishtim off the chessboard, and in Bereshis 26:13, that's when they first strike a covenant with the Plishtim. So that's the beginning of their story, and this is going to be the end of their story. Okay, now we get somebody out of left field. Vayishlach Hiram melech Tzur melachim el David. So Hiram, the king of Tzur, Tyre, he sends to David melachim.
Like in Lebanon, like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
no.
I thought it was Assyria, no?
No. There is a city called Tyre in Syria, but he's going to send him Arze Levano. He's going to send him like the cedars to build his, well, here. So he sends workers el David v'atze arazim v'charoshe eitz v'charoshe even kir v'yivnu bayis leDavid. He sends cedar logs, carpenters, and stonemasons, and they build a palace for David. So David and Hiram and even Shlomo and Hiram are going to be good buddies for a long, long time. Vayed David ki heichinu Adonai lemelech al Yisrael, and David knew that Hashem has now firmly established him as the king over the Jewish people. V'chini samam lachto ba'avur amo Yisrael, and that his kingship has been elevated, exalted. They have over here for the sake of the Jewish people. V'yikach David od pilakshim v'nashim Yerushalayim, and now David has more wives in Yerushalayim. Acharei bo mechebron, after he comes up from Hebron, v'yivaldu lo. V'yivaldu od leDavid banimu banos. And now David has many more children. We're going to name all of the children, including ones that do not appear for a long time chronologically in Sefer Shmuel. You're just going to get the whole list here early, and some of them, like Shlomo, are going to show up much later. Ve'ele shmos hayuladim lo b'Yushalayim Shamua v'Shova v'Nasan u'Shlomo v'Yivchar v'Elishua v'Nefeg v'Yafia v'Elishama v'Eliada v'Eliphalet.
So this is not the same as Natan Hanavi, is it?
Not the same as Natan Hanavi, as far as I know.
And why is Shlomo like just sandwiched in there?
It's chronological. That's when he was.
I thought. Wait, so his other kids were already born, like
some of his other kids.
And
the
ones
Absalom,
who get wiped out.
Yeah, those were all born from wives that he had children with in Hebron. Yes.
Except for Chilav.
Right. No, he had Chilav without begat.
He doesn't get wiped out. Chilav is just out.
It's kind of important that Hiram acknowledges David's kingship at this point. Like, even David doesn't feel that his kingship is firmly in his hands until he starts getting international acknowledgments, like the U.S. recognizing the state of Israel. It lends credibility that the outside world identifies this, and they remain friends, like we said, for a while.
Also, we know that Shlomo is Bathsheba's son, right?
Yes.
So, we haven't heard of Bathsheba yet.
No, that's we've got a while to go before that. Okay. Now that David is firmly established in his kingship, the thing that David is here to do, and that all the kings had been here to do so far, is get rid of the Plishtim, right? So now we get to finally do that. Vishmu Plishtim ki mashchu as David lamelech. Remember, last the Plishtim heard, David was like kind of in the pocket of the king of God. Now they hear that the Jewish people have anointed David as king lamelech al Yisrael. Vayalu kol plishtim levakesh es David vayishma David vayered el hametzudah. And now David goes down to the fortress. Now he has a fortified place from which to launch a battle against the Plishtim. Plishtim ba'u vayinatshu be'emek Rephaim, and the Plishtim come and they spread out all over the valley of Emek Rephaim. So this is basically like a shot-for-shot remake of Shaul's life. He gets inaugurated and he fights a battle with the Plishtim. I guess we can talk about chiastic structure at the end. Let's just see what happens in this battle. Vish al David Adonai lemor, and David inquires of God, saying, Ha'aleh el Plishtim. Should I go up against the Plishtim? Hatinosim biyadi. Remember, you have to ask question by question. But here we get two in one shot. Are you God going to give them into my hand? And we get a sort of a psucha, break in the middle of the pasuk, which is unusual. Vayomer Adonai el David, Allah. Go up. So that's the answer to the first question. Ki natan etain et haplishim biyadecha. I'm going to give the plishim in your hands. Vayavo David beval pratzim. And so David goes up to this very interestingly named place called Bal Pratzim. Vayakem Sham David Vayomer Paratz Adonai es oivai lifanai keperetz. David now says that God has broken through my enemies before me, keperetz mayim, like breaking through a dam of water. Al kain karashem hamakomahu Bal Pratzim. Therefore, the place, like we told you at the beginning of the pasuk, it was called Bal Pratzim. Well, who's David descended from? Who's David descended from?
Peretz.
Yehuda's son Peretz, right? So there, David again, he's identifying that this is foundational to his malchus. The same way his malchus comes from Yehuda and Peretz, this event is foundational to that, and that's going to be very important to us. That this term Peretz is going to show up again in the next parak, and I want you to contrast what we're seeing over here of the firm establishment of his malchus versus the way the term is used in the next parak. Vayazvu sham es atzabehem v'yisaim David v'anashav, and the Plishtim abandoned their idols there. And v'yisaim, how do you have, what would you translate v'yisaim?
Usually it's like lifted, right?
Yeah.
But
he carried them off.
Yeah.
So what is that about? So in Divrei Hayamim we have Yisrafim, and he burnt them. Here, it's a completely different word. How can you justify hauling away the Plishti gods? Weird, right?
Right.
Okay, so the simplest explanation is there are two kinds of Plishti gods. There's the wood ones and the metal ones. The wood ones you burn, so that's V'Yisrafim in Divrei Hayamim. The metal ones, it's much harder to get rid of, so they haul them off to wherever they need to melt them down or get them destroyed, or right, Yam HaMelech, whatever they're going to do with them. But, and I guess let's finish and then we'll go back. This whole situation should be stirring up memories from Shmuel Aleph. V'yasifu o plishtim la'alos v'yinatshu be'emek Rephaim. So the plishtim once again march, and they spread out all over the valley of Rephaim like they tend to do. V'yishal David b'Adonai vayomer lo ta'aleh. So David asked God again. And the assumption here is the Urim v'Tumim again. Are we doing this one more time? And God's like, no, don't go. Hasev el acharehem. I want you to do like a flanking maneuver around the back. Ubasa lahem mimul b'chaim, and I want you to go to the ba'acha trees in the back and take cover in that forest area over there. Vayhi kishamachas es kol tza'ada, and it will be when you hear the sound of them marching b'rashei habachim, that sound is coming through the tops of the trees. Az techaratz, that's when I want you to go into action. Ki az yatsa Adonai lefanecha, because God is going to go before you. Lahakos b'machane plishtim. I'm going to wipe out the camp of the plishtim. Vayas David Cain. David does exactly what God says. Kasher tzivahu Adonai vayach es plishtim migeva ad bo'achaz gazer, and he wipes the plishtim out all the way from Geva down to Gezer. Okay.
So why does God need to give David's strategy pointers? Why isn't God just gonna be like, yeah, go knock him out?
Right.
Like what's the Indian of God being like, this time, like
we do it this way.
Yeah, get some style points this time. Like,
right.
Okay, last time you just rushed in and you slaughtered them all. Like this time, do it a little sneaky. Let's mix it up. Like, what's the point?
That's fair. Some of it is just to see if he's going to listen, because it's very easy to say go into battle and you will win. It's very hard to wait for see the whites of their eyes, and the army is marching. If they march past David and go into Yerushalayim, he's done. He's sunk.
Right.
So God's sort of like, can you wait and see? Can you wait for my command and only go put yourself sort of in a scary position and wait and hold that line until I tell you now's the time?
That's a good answer. I like
So-
that.
Also build him up as a military commander in the eyes.
Strategy,
Not just God.
yeah.
It's wow, he's a great military guy.
Yeah,
So
well,
what-
if you got God on your side, you don't really need.
Well, dude, Plishtim don't believe in God.
Yeah.
So-
Okay,
So
fair
guys,
enough.
you're in line with the note here. God was testing David to see if he would display this sort of impetuosity that caused Shaul to lose his throne.
Okay, so that's a great point, and that takes us to our chiastic structure. So remember, chiastic structure, chi is the Greek letter for X. A chiastic structure is when you have A, B, and then B, and then B, A. So how does that play out over here? So first, if you recall back in Shmuel Aleph, we have the same situation. We have the loss of the Aron. Shaul becomes king. Shaul fights Plishtim and wins the first time, loses the second time. Then that's A, B, and then Shaul's winning and then losing. Then David becomes king. David fights the Plishtim. He wins and he returns the Aron. That's going to be the beginning of the next parak. So the whole story is kind of bookended. The beginning of Shmuel, the Aron is taken by the Plishtim. Shaul fights them. He wins the first time. He loses. Then David becomes king, fights the Plishtim, and brings the Aron back. That's the sort of the overarching narrative. Is the Aron was lost at the beginning of Shmuel Aleph, and because of what just happened right now, the Aron's going to come back. The difference between David's win and Shaul's win is that Shaul didn't consult with the Urim V'Tumim. He didn't ask God what to do. He just went and fought the battle. Versus David, the reason he's successful is because he brings Hashem into everything that he does. Yeah, I think that's probably good enough for now. Please God,
Two
next
quick
week.
things.
Yeah, go ahead.
Article actually translates V'Yisrael.
Yeah,
They burned them.
right. So they do that because where is it?
Because he said that Binyamin says
Right. So Divrei Yamim, it's 14:12. I can pull it up for you here.
They don't try to explain it any other way.
Right.
The other thing that was interesting.
We call that cheating.
The note on the bottom.
Vayazvu sham. This is Divrei Yamim Aleph Yud Daled Yud Beis. Vayazvu sham es ha'Elohehem. Vayomer David v'yisrafu ba'esh. And David ordered that they should be burned. That's a different word.
And then there's an interesting note on by the Yerushalayim that being protected by the blind and the lame.
Mm-hmm.
So because of Barbanel saying that shows how what we've thought, like the city's so fortified
Okay.
that even they could do it. But there's a midrash that the Yevusi alludes to the patriarchs. So Abraham had made a treaty of peace with Abimelech, right? And he's apparently a Yevusi ancestor.
Okay.
And to commemorate the binding nature of that treaty, they set up statues of a blind man.
So this is Pirkei D'Rabbi Elazar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A blind man referencing Yitzchak, who was blind. And the lame is Yaakov, who was hurt.
Right.
Malach. So and then they put copies of the treaty in their statues' mouths.
Right.
That was interesting.
And they told David, you can't come in here because we have a covenant with Abraham. And okay, Adkan, Yashar Koach. This is the end, beautiful friend. Thank you for joining us on our journey of learning, and I hope you will tune in for another episode soon, Mirz Hashem. Be well.